Streamline Moderne is an adaptation of the Art Deco architecture of the 1920s. It kept the emphasis on technological progress and geometric forms, but it stripped the ornament in favor of sleek, aerodynamic forms and economical materials in the face of the Great Depression. Opulent materials and ornate sculpture were out, and concrete, tile, and stucco were in. Now, one theme that was central to this style was aerodynamics. If you look at cars from the time, they've got a very flowy, organic shape to them, especially compared to some more modern cars. Now, inspired by these sleek new modes of transportation, Streamline Moderne architecture sought to evoke that feeling of speed by using rounded edges and long horizontal lines. It's somewhat similar to futurist architecture in that regard, both trying to capture the essence of speed in a medium that is notably not very fast. So, to start things off, here's a car. And like I said earlier, transportation is a huge influence for this style of architecture. And I really tried to evoke those kind of flowy shapes where it, is round up front and then tapers off into a fine point at the back. And scale-wise, this is pretty huge compared to how big your Minecraft character is, but that's something you've got to kind of work with within your build, because it's a trade-off between having the form you want and having it be at the scale you want. And I've found for some styles, they work a lot better at 1-to-1 scale, and a lot more they work better at kind of a little bit larger than life scale, where this is 4 meters wide. No car is really ever that wide, but you do get a kind of more expressive form by giving yourself more room to work with. And so for all of these builds, these are kind of scaled up a little bit bigger than how they would be in real life scale. So one very simple thing that's essentially the entire point of this architectural style is to take, the typical square block building and kind of round the corners and make it sleek and aerodynamic, just like that car, where, if this was in a wind tunnel, this would have a lot of resistance. This would be nice and smooth. That's where the name Streamline comes from. And now typically you don't want to make these corners super big. We're not looking to make like an oval or 2 semicircular edges. We kind of want quarter circles where, with the rest of these mainly, we've got the corner tapered off instead of having a whole side be a semicircle. It's kind of a subtle difference, but they read differently, and this still reads more as like a rectangle, whereas 2 semicircular ends, you're getting more of an oval, like racetrack kind of shape. This is more our speed. So here is a diner. Make use of mostly white. White and chrome are some cool kind of colors you can use, and then accents of mostly pastels, but your pinks, your teals, all that jazz. So we've got basically circle overload. We've got a quarter circle here, and then another one for our kind of awning overhang. And then with these windows, another quarter circle, and at the end, they come into a rounded point. So it's like one continuous line that runs all the way around the window. And we've got our sign here, also a quarter circle. And this is a really common theme. You'll see this wasn't a big like residential style. It was almost entirely commercial buildings. And so you don't need to serve like the residential needs. It's mainly just pure expression of form with the commercial need baked into that. And so signage is a hugely important part of commercial architecture. I did a whole video on roadside architecture, the duck, and the decorated shed, which I'll link here. And this kind of ties into that theme, where we've got a large, again, quarter circle part that ties in with our theme and calls attention to the function of this building. So in contrast to Art Deco behind me here, all the dominating lines in Streamline Moderne are going to be horizontal compared to vertical. This is really emphasizing, how broad the building would be instead of how tall it is. That's really, the key difference based on which direction you want your lines to go. Do you want to emphasize this direction or this direction? And so we've kind of segmented it into layers. Much like the Prairie School video, Frank Lloyd Wright also did this to emphasize the kind of flatness of the American plains. This one is kind of emphasizing, the broadness of the buildings. One other feature is the use of glass block. So a real common thing with mods is to get kind of connected glass textures. So instead of having the individual glass blocks, you'd have one big solid pane. But Streamline Moderne made heavy use of glass block, and so this is one of those times where you'd actually would want to see the markings out of every single block, because it's reading as a bunch of pieces, which it was, rather than one solid piece. And if you don't have connected textures, stained glass is a much better kind of alternative to plain clear glass, because with stained glass the border is the same color as the glass, and so there's not really that much contrast between the two, whereas these we can definitely read out that these are individual blocks. Alright, this is a porthole window. Now essentially there are really two types of windows in here. You get the long kind of spanning glass block ones that basically run the entire length of the wall, or you get these kind of porthole windows. And this kind of calls to like a steamliner or a kind of boat, which is another heavy inspiration for this theme, especially in France. And so these kind of porthole windows evoke the feeling that this big building is like a cruise liner. And many architects did take a lot of inspiration from cruise ships, because they were essentially buildings on the water, and it was an entirely new style of, or new need for architecture, because before this time you didn't really have the ability to put those kind of extra amenities on a boat, and so that was an emerging style, and so many people took inspiration from that and brought it to grounded architecture. And so to make these porthole windows, you need a 3x2 space. Just get some stairs on either end, and then it creates kind of a 2x2 circle here. Now, if you've ever been to Disneyland in Anaheim, you might recognize this. This is the entrance to what was the Pan Pacific Auditorium in California, but in Disneyland, the entrance to California Adventure is a recreation of this kind of entryway. And the auditorium itself really wasn't anything special, but the facade and the entryway was a great piece of Streamline Moderne architecture. And it had these four kind of fins that evoked the image of like an airplane fin, with the horizontal lines and these sort of aerodynamic curves. And these are probably a little bit overscaled, but they're about just the right level of detail we'd want for a sort of Minecraft recreation. Made use of slabs and then just had a hole in the middle to get that flagpole going through. Since these are kind of on alternating levels, these are stairs with the top and the bottom to keep that horizontal line going instead of having a block here, since we couldn't do that. And those are the kind of sacrifices you need to make, depending on what element is most important, and you can kind of change other details to suit that. And so decided here it was more important to have these streaking horizontal lines and keep them the same thickness rather than having them be a full block thick. So use stairs, which unfortunately means we couldn't get the blue in there, but as a whole they read really well. And having the sort of large blocks in Minecraft makes it hard to create curved shapes, but it also gives you a bit more freedom, since the curves and the overall shapes don't have to be perfect. They just have to be gestural enough to kind of evoke the feeling that you're trying to inspire. Like, if you're working in a 3D modeling software or something, you have to be super precise with where you want your curves to end up, their thickness, what you want, or like the proportions and how thick you want them to read in relation to your more stereotomic elements. And what's really nice about Minecraft is that it's pretty easy. Like, it's proportioned for you. You can only have things in certain shapes and sizes. And so working with that kind of limited set of tools gives you a bit more creative freedom, because not everything has to be perfect, it just has to be good enough. So, I don't know, working in this sort of like cubic block representation allows you to be a bit more abstract with it and give you a bit more space for creative interpretation, in my opinion. And yeah. Okay, so finally we've got this train station here, and I guess we'll start off with the train itself. Again, trying to keep that sleek aerodynamic kind of quality to it, and so very round and reads as kind of one piece rather than a bunch of elements put together. This is kind of one big gesture where it's a kind of round curved piece that bends down and meets the rail. You can just imagine this like cutting through air like it's butter. And we've got our nice big old headlight on the front, and then it kind of carves away where you can see the wheels underneath, and then it follows a very smooth profile where all of the cars behind it are in that same shape, so it's just one continuous motion going all the way back. Next, let's bring our attention to the train station. Essentially, two big rectangles on top of each other with the rounded edges, and then the entryway here marked by this big clock, which is really simple, but from a distance it reads really nicely, minimalist. We've just got a piece of glazed terracotta in there and some buttons surrounding it to mark the numbers, and then our entryway here kind of recessed back in. And normally when you're doing an entryway, there's a couple ways you can do it, and I've kind of done both, where you can have the threshold kind of come out of the building and you enter into there, or it's carved into the building. And both of those kind of demarcate your entryway threshold and signify its importance compared to just ye old hole kind of poked into it. There's a lot of ways you can kind of signify it and give it its own kind of entryway space, and kind of helps cement it as more important. So we've got our windows here for any kind of shop or something that would be on this ground level, and then our second floor, this is more of a clerestory window, big old architecture term for you. Instead of a window that you would look through, a clerestory is a window that's above eye level, really just to let light or air in, rather than to be a viewing window. And one other thing, making use of complementary colors to have the sort of signage piece fin contrast with the brown kind of stucco and tile material of our train station. So leave it here and I'll show you the kind of helpful tool. So this is Adobe Color, free website, and essentially this is just a tool to help you find different color palettes that work well together. Basically does the math for you. So there's different ways of creating harmonious colors, and probably the most simple would be complementary, essentially colors that are on opposite sides of the color wheel. So what we had was kind of a tan brownish color, and opposite of that would be blue. But there's other ways you can do it. Analogous colors that are sort of similar to the color you picked. So, you know, if you're going with red, you can get your oranges and your pinks. Or monochromatic, just having them all be variations of a single hue. So going from light blue to a pale desaturated blue to a dark blue. Triad, these colors are split into 3 on the color wheel, and these aren't something that you would want to do in a building per se. If you had if you were making a subway, you might want to have the different routes be in these contrasting colors, but typically we don't want to work with the 3 primary colors together, or 3 contrasting colors like this, because they kind of read a little bit juvenile. Split complementary is a nice one you can have compared to just an orange and blue. You can have an orange and an indigo, and then an orange and a teal, or yellow and dark blue and kind of a pinkier purple. Just hovering on either side of that exact complementary color to give you kind of a balanced 3 instead of the 3 that are very far from each other. Square, also like the triad, and compound is like split complementary, but now both colors are kind of split like this. So just kind of a fun tool you can use to create your color palettes and start working with colors that really work well together. Thank you guys so much for watching. My next video is going to be coming out shortly. It'll be on my next studio project. We're doing a public restroom. So look forward to that. It'll be out probably by next week at the latest. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton. Really appreciate all your support. If you have any suggestions for what I should cover next, please drop them down below, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.